Boom. Keep them coming.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the T-Lou podcast. I am your host, Bobbybarks. I am joined by regular stalwarts Jessevdmeulen
Hey, what's up, everyone?
and Cy the Cy 909.
Hey, how's it going?
Today is a very special episode because we have a very popular guest on. We have former Naughty Dog employee David Ballard with us today.
Howdy.
David, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
No, thank you. Really appreciate you coming on. There's quite a few things that we want to talk to you about today. One of the first things is obviously the series of tweets that you released on the 14th of October. We then went on to make a podcast about a week and a half ago around those tweets. And I guess the first thing that I wanted to ask you really was, we talked in depth from a neutral perspective about things. There is some areas that we misunderstood about criminal law in America because none of us are based out in the States, and we were just wanting you to talk to us really to see if there's anything that you wanted to answer that we couldn't answer ourselves in the previous episode.
Sure. I listened to your whole episode. I skipped over the Last of Us 2 trailer. I haven't seen that, and I won't watch that.
Oh.
However, I really appreciated the way that you all tackled discussing my situation, and I thought it was really well spoken.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Yes, thank you. Let me go back to the original tweets that you released then. Are you okay if I read these out for the people that are going to be watching the video?
Absolutely.
Okay, so in late 2015, I was sexually harassed at Naughty Dog by a lead. My work environment became extremely toxic afterwards. In February 2016, I had a mental breakdown at work, and Sony PlayStation HR became involved. When I told them about their harassment, they ended the call and fired me the next day. They cited the company was moving in a different direction, and my job was no longer needed. They tried to silence me by offering $20,000 if I signed a letter agreeing to the termination, as well as to not discuss it with anyone. I declined to sign. I have been unemployed for 17 months since. When interviewers ask me why I left Naughty Dog, I say I was burned out by the crunch, ashamed to get to the root of the problem of being sexually harassed. I'm speaking out now because of the strength I've seen in others coming forward about their experiences in the TV and film industry. This is the hardest thing I've ever done. I will not let anyone kill my drive or love for the video game industry, my passions or life. So I think the first thing that I want to say about that, David, is that is a very strong tweet and a very brave thing to come out and say. And I think the replies that you got off the back of those series of tweets are very positive. A lot of people have...
Very supportive.
Yeah, a lot of people have been very supportive about the situation.
Yes. Thank you for that. I'm very appreciative of everybody who reached out to me, all the positivity that people gave to me. It meant a lot.
If we just try and break down the tweet a little bit and see if that you can elaborate on anything, and I appreciate that you might not want to, and if you don't want to, that's entirely fine. You know, we're not going to pressure you into trying to release any more information than what you already have. But just for us to try and gain a little bit of understanding about the tweets, the topic of sexual harassment, are you comfortable or allowed to tell us what that actual sexual harassment is? Are you allowed to tell us whether it was physical, whether it was emotional, whether it was verbal?
Well, sure. I'll tell you like a lot about it. There's some details I'll keep private. I feel that some of it's very personal.
Yeah.
However, I will say that it was a physical act. The individual snuck up behind me at my desk at Naughty Dog and did the thing that they did to me, and it did emotionally scar me in a lot of ways, and I've been traumatized by the event. Whenever I think about it, I have that feeling of my body being touched by them come up.
Yeah, that must be pretty. It must be heavy to deal with. I feel. How do you feel about the? We slightly touched upon this, but how do you feel like the community, Naughty Dog community, because that's pretty tight knit community, I'd say, reacted to your series of tweets? Was there anything surprising that you didn't expect to see first?
So much support. Everybody, I mean, the majority of people said that they supported me, and there was a certain language I thought was interesting that people said, if true, then something needs to happen. This isn't right, and there was some negativity. Some people are saying, "Is this true? Like, where's the proof? Where's the evidence?" And the evidence is in Sony's hands, and that's something I've reiterated. Naughty Dog made a statement after mine saying that they had no evidence that I had told them or submitted a complaint about being sexually harassed to them, and I did not tell them about sexual harassment. I told Sony corporate HR about being harassed, and that is something that has not been addressed by Sony.
And they offered you $20,000 to keep quiet, right?
Yes.
Why did you choose not to accept that money?
Something didn't feel right.
Did they? Yeah, I can imagine it being really hard to keep quiet about something like that, and then you say, well, $20,000 is a lot of money, but then in exchange for something like that and something that you have to carry with you throughout your life, essentially, I don't think they'd say, well, after 30 years you can come forward. So I think that's a good decision as well, not to accept that. How do you call it? Like, not bribe money, right? But like
hush money.
Hush money.
Yeah, and people said, hey, maybe it was just severance. However, the way that they terminated my employment with them was wrong, and I had to sign this letter saying that I agreed, and that was the big thing. I didn't agree with what they were doing to me, and that's why I didn't sign.
Were you actually off work sick at the time that this letter was put forward to you?
Yes. So in my tweets, I say that Sony HR became involved. It was a 2-week time period between my mental breakdown and Sony HR becoming involved. And in that 2 weeks, I was constantly working with Naughty Dog HR, in which I did complain about an individual lead who I was not being able to work with at the company. And after 2 weeks and them being unable to find a way to provide me a positive work environment, they forwarded me to Sony HR. And at that point is when I told them about, they asked me about this individual, and I told them about the sexual harassment, and that's when they said they would get back to me. And then next thing I know is I have an email or a voicemail saying that because they couldn't accommodate me, they were going to terminate my employment.
Did in the aftermath of your series of tweets, did any colleagues or former colleagues reach out to you?
Several, yes. Some, the majority, overwhelming support. Some came to me with questions. There's a form of victim blaming where you say, "Why didn't you tell me?" And I got some of that. People who wanted me to tell them what happened, that kind of stuff, rather than believing me and supporting me.
Did you tell some of your other work colleagues and friends at the time of the incident?
No, I didn't tell anybody about the sexual harassment.
Was that just because you wasn't sure how to move forward with it, or you was a bit embarrassed about it? Or
reflecting back on it, I think that I was trying to handle it in a way that I knew how to, and being that it challenged my masculinity in certain ways, it was kind of I got to show that this doesn't bother me kind of thing. I had to be strong.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's ultimately what led to my mental breakdown, was trying to be strong when really on the inside I was very upset and very angry.
I think personally, unfortunately, sexual abuse towards men is seen as a little bit taboo. So I kind of understand where you're coming from there. It's normally seen as sexual harassment is male to female. Do you know what I mean? So it doesn't supposedly not happen to men. So yeah, I think I can understand what you're saying there. Yeah, that makes sense.
I think men in general seem to go through this. You said it in a nutshell, David. Masculinity, don't they? And it's I don't think it's just around sexual harassment. I think it's with things like depression and stress that men usually try and keep. Yeah, they don't want. They're not very good at talking about things, and we just keep things bottled up, and we don't always go, even like myself, I'm married, but I don't always tell my wife everything that I'm going through on a day-to-day basis at work that I might keep bottled up that could be stressing me out or making me feel a bit depressed.
Right.
And I think, as men, we're all guilty of that a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it comes down to society and the cultural norms that we have, what it means to be a man, and I'll say right now, like, seeing people like Terry Crews, who came out and said, "Hey, I was sexually harassed," and to see that a man can come forward with that and not be challenged in a way about his sexuality, that meant a lot to me. I saw that as a role model.
Yeah. Okay, just going back to the particular incident then, you said following the sexual harassment that your work environment became toxic. Was that because you was just replaying the incident over and over in your head, or was that because the individual kept trying to do certain things?
Or even seeing that person every day is like
Yes.
big thing as well.
So it was definitely a lot of seeing the person every day. There was again, being challenged and having to prove that didn't bother me, and that it was an abuse of power. It was a lead, and it was somebody who had authority over me, and it was somebody who I had to not let that get under my skin, and I had to try to maintain a positive work environment, and it's very difficult.
Do you know why the person did this?
No, you'd have to ask the person.
Yeah. That person didn't come out after your series of tweets and contacted you privately, or?
No, they did not.
Okay.
And
no worries. We'll move on a little bit, David.
Okay.
You've been unemployed since leaving Naughty Dog. I did have a look through your CV, because you've got your own website with your CV on there, and it's very, very impressive.
Thanks, sir.
By the looks of your tweets, you have been for job interviews since that. You've just struggled at the interview stage because they've asked you the question of why you left Naughty Dog.
Yeah, I was asked recently why I think that I've been having issues, and I've interviewed with I think closer to about 70 companies now in the past since I left Naughty Dog. I did get hired on with a friend's company for short term. That's why I say 17 months was since then. However, trying to reflect on why I think there's always been this elephant in the room, and a lot of it has been the way that I've dealt with all of this since leaving Naughty Dog has been to try to be apologetic about it, to try to see that I messed up in a way and that I need to be apologetic about having left Naughty Dog. And now I'm no longer apologetic. Like, I mean, I apologize if I hurt or offended anybody in any way, of course. However, I see now why I was doing what I was doing and what happened to me, and it's been very freeing. Like, this whole experience of speaking out and telling my story has been liberating, and
One imagine weight lifted off your shoulders. Yeah.
I was going to ask you that question actually. Next.
One thing we asked on a previous episode of our podcast is the Last of Us 2 trailer. You heard that there was a trailer released during Paris Games Week. We thought that there could be a possibility that it was released early because a lot of people expected something new from the Last of Us Part 2 around PSX. We thought that there could be a possibility that they released it early to sort of take the attention away from the your tweets. Do you think that that's a legitimate possibility, or do you think that's just tinfoil conspiracy?
I guess it could be possible. I won't speculate, as I'm not the person who made that decision of why to release it for Paris Games. However, I will say that I was a little bit disappointed by Naughty Dog's response to my tweets.
Yeah, I've seen it as well. Very short.
Felt a bit cold. It was a bit cold. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it was. It didn't address anything, and I mean, like. Sure, maybe they don't have evidence that I reported something to the Naughty Dog people, although I did complain about a person to them. I did submit something to Sony HR, and that hasn't been addressed. And also, I mean, they haven't even asked me what happened. And nobody's reached out to me from Naughty Dog to ask what happened, or how they can help in any way. And I mean, the event happened down my desk, and I know there's security cameras in the office. I mean, and I have a rough time period. So, I mean, they could find the evidence of my sexual harassment if they really wanted to.
I guess you feel a little bit let down and disappointed that they're not actually following this up then.
Well, I was going to say that the thing that disappoints me the most is that, I mean, it was a company that I spent almost 7 years with, some very deep friendships and relationships I built there, and helped build a community and some video games I'm very proud of to have made, and to not have any kind of support at all after all this has been disappointing.
Yeah, luckily, the community did support you a bit, but I feel not a bit, but did support you. But yeah, getting sort of no recognition from your, or almost none recognition from your former employer can be kind of hard. I can imagine that.
Yeah, I suppose for me, what would be the disappointment as well is when you look at how IGN are handling the 2 female employees. I think there's one former employee and one current employee, and how they've responded to those. And I look at how Naughty Dog and Sony have responded to yourself, David, and it is very, very differently to how IGN have reacted. And I suppose that, for me, is the disappointing thing. Have you seen the response from IGN about that?
Yes, yeah, I retweeted both responses that they put out, and yeah, I had the same thoughts. I was pretty impressed by how IGN handled their response and everything.
Going on to your final tweet on the matter after Naughty Dog's statement, you've mentioned in there that you don't want to publicly name the individual, which I completely understand, because you don't want anyone's safety being put in jeopardy. Completely understand that. I guess what we don't understand is obviously the federal and state law in America about the timelines. So I'm just wondering if you can explain that a little bit to us as to the reason why a criminal case can't be brought forward.
Sure. So first I'll say that I'm not just thinking about the individual. I'm thinking about their family. Naughty Dog was, I felt very kin to a lot of people and their families, and it's something that's very dear to me. And it should have been something like when I told the co-president and Naughty Dog HR about my problems with this person, they accused me of wanting to fire them rather than offering any other kind of solution. And I said, I don't want you to fire them. I thought there was another solution, and I still think there is. So at this point, I'm not seeking any kind of criminal charge against this person. The thing is because I told Sony HR about this, and it was their responsibility to take care of me and provide the necessary help, and they didn't do it. So that said, there is when I spoke about the federal and state timelines, that's referring to filing a discrimination claim against Naughty Dog or Sony for discriminating against me for being sexually harassed and them firing me for it.
Right. Okay. I understand that now a bit more.
Yeah, it's like I can no longer say, "Hey, this happened to me," and they can. There's no longer a federal mandate or state mandate that can go into Naughty Dog and Sony and require them to submit the information that would indicate what happened.
Okie doke. Jesse, Sai, have you got any more questions?
Well, I have more questions about TLU MP and the process of creating that multiplayer.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's a bit more light-hearted subject for you, David.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think if we're all done with this chapter for this podcast, I think we can move on to the next act. I think.
Yeah, I think we could move on to the multiplayer aspects. If you're okay talking about some of the work that you did on on the single player and the multiplayer, really, David.
I don't think I did anything on the single player, but I would love to talk about the multiplayer. Yeah.
Okay.
Go on, Jesse.
Yeah, I'm gonna kick it off. Oh yeah. All right. First off, what's actually the favorite map you've created in TLU Factions?
Ooh.
Or helped create?
I want to say probably
Downtown.
Downtown was my favorite map to do artistically. Design-wise, it was the weakest map, and there's a variety of reasons for that. Learning process. However, I think Dam was probably one of my favorites. That one wasn't originally. You like Dam?
Dam is probably my favorite map, but there's one minor thingy that bothers me a bit about it, and that's the fog. Like mid-game, I'm like, all right, boys, got the double upgrade on my hunting rifle. Let's snipe some people. But then it's just like the whole map is filled in a sort of smoke bomb area.
That's an interesting point.
Yeah, I was wondering, why is there actually, if you can remember, why is there actually fog on the Dam, and also on Suburbs, the Sandstorm?
It was to add variety to gameplay. That was something I remember the multiplayer team discussed about adding. To add an event to make it more of a dynamic map rather than a fully static map.
More like Uncharted 3 multiplayer, like Yemen had the Sandstorm as well. Did you work on Uncharted 3 multiplayer?
I did. Not in the same capacity, though. I did a little bit.
I like that multiplayer as well a lot. It's the Naughty Dog multiplayers are so criminally underrated.
I appreciate that statement.
Yeah, I like a lot of the maps you've worked on actually. Like University is another map I really like. Since the hunting rifle is one of my favorite weapons. And there's the Dam does have this. It used to be like this the biggest map in the whole of TLO multiplayer, right?
Yeah, that one turned out to be very successful. And the story behind it is that it wasn't originally on a part of the production, and it was something I did on my own as a personal project. And then a couple weeks before the deadline came, I said, "Hey, I have this map I've been doing," and they weren't very excited about me adding to the tight schedule already.
So you're essentially like responsible for the birth of the Dam, right?
Yes.
What an honor to speak to you. It's one of the most played maps in the competitive community of Last of Us.
Awesome, thank you.
Did you see, like, there's been this glitch recently where people were glitching out of the map in order to visit that little house at one of the spawn points? Did you see any of that, or did that just go by you completely?
I've seen a few videos of people doing some sort of glitch to get into the various areas of the maps.
Oh, pretty interesting. But that's like what you get after the game's lifespan. People just try out those kind of things as well.
What's that other mode that people have started doing?
Oh, co-op, yeah.
So this is something I don't know if I can speak publicly about. I did try to find something online, and there was some mention of a Sony rep talking about co-op in Last of Us multiplayer. So that said, I'll just say that it was quite an experience to develop this multiplayer and all the iterations we went through and all the different things we tried out to get to what we shipped.
Did you trial a horde mode? Did that ever come on the agenda?
I can't say when I joined the Last of Us team, I had been on the Uncharted 4 team before, and then Last of Us was in trouble production-wise, and they moved a lot of people from Uncharted 4 over to The Last of Us, and I was one of those people. And given my experience on multiplayer previously at Naughty Dog, they asked if I would be the artist for the multiplayer on Last of Us, and I said yes. And then so there'd already been a bit of work done for the Last of Us multiplayer before I joined the team. So before I joined, I couldn't speak to. And then about 1 or 2 months into me joining the team, the level designer on Last of Us, who did a lot of the groundwork, he quit Naughty Dog, and then they again came to me and said, "Hey, we don't have the time and resources to hire another designer since you've designed one map. Would you for Uncharted 3, which was Old Quarter DLC map, would you mind being both the designer and the artist for Last of Us multiplayer?"
Dang, so awesome.
And you managed to sneak your name into university, didn't you?
Yeah.
In university?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a Ballard Research Center.
Oh, that was the there's one other artist who was on the project. That was Heather Serlin. She was part-time multiplayer, part-time single player, and she was a texture artist, and she snuck that in for me. And that's, thank you, Heather.
Yeah, but you notice it quite a lot on university, because I think there's like Cobb Stadium as well. And there's
Quinn and Cobb is on Uncharted 4 as well in Scotland. Did you help out on Uncharted 4 as well?
I did. So I shipped, helped shipped Last of Us multiplayer, and then moved on to Uncharted 4 multiplayer, and they, I guess, were happy that I could do both design and art for multiplayer levels, and they had me in that role again for Uncharted 4. A few months into that, I had this opportunity come my way to move to San Francisco, which was something that I wanted to do. A lot of my friends at Naughty Dog would joke that I would commute to work from San Francisco, which was quite true sometimes. And so the opportunity came, and I took it, and it was really sad to leave Naughty Dog. However, that didn't work out, and Naughty Dog graciously took me back, and I was very appreciative of that. And then I helped them finish out Uncharted 4 multiplayer.
I know that this is a Last of Us podcast, but I'm curious which maps you had like most input in creating.
I'll look at them. I can tell you right now, my favorite map that I worked on was Sunken Ruins, which came out for DLC. It was originally on to ship with the game. However, they paused it and put on DLC.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of DLC maps in Uncharted 4. I like how they kept it so updated and fresh in a way as well. And my favorite map in Uncharted 4 has to be Island, probably. Or no, not Island, and River. Well, since I play with the sniper, so it's like a really good sniping maps. But also one thing I was wondering was how do you make a decision to make a map? Because we've seen from the Tilo community, a lot of people have asked questions, especially around the time of Left Behind. Why isn't there a hospital map DLC? Why are we getting the beach, for example, in Financial Plaza, but not hospital, so the final stages of The Last of Us single player, or the mall from Left Behind? Could you elaborate a bit on that as to like why some maps make it through the COD and some others don't?
Interesting question. So the hospital is particularly interesting. So because the multiplayer is being made in tandem with the single player, we kind of and there's a lot less resources available. We would need to see what was being made. We couldn't just make levels on our own and then say, okay, we want full production for that. We would have to kind of wait for a single player to kind of get to a point and then go in and see what we could reuse and be inspired by from that. So that said, you mentioned the hospital. A designer actually did design a multiplayer map in hospital, though for whatever reason it got cut.
It seems like such a fun close quarter map, right?
Yeah.
What is actually your favorite weapon in Tilo MP?
I am a sniper. I was the company sniper at Naughty Dog. I think probably the best sniper in the company, other than some guy that QA could.
A bold claim. I think Quinnen could handle the rifle a little bit better.
I don't know. Him and I would get into it. I think I could outsnipe Quinnen, but he would definitely get me with the mid-range AR weapons.
Oh, interesting.
Do you actually play the multiplayer yourself still?
I did. Last of Us multiplayer I was playing again last year. Uncharted 4 I've stopped. I racked up quite a headshot gallery.
Uncharted 4?
Yes.
I did as well. Say the Uncharted 4 community is a bit less active than the Tilo community was back in its heyday.
It's interesting.
Yeah, especially because like I think the Tilo community was such a random gem. I think like how long did it actually take to fully make the Tilo MP? Because it's always been said that it was sort of rushed out and oh guys, let's just make a MP as well along with the single player. So how long did that process actually take?
I don't know if I should say exactly. That might break some sort of NDA, so I'm gonna watch it on that one. How would I say it was? I joined. I was on Last of Us for 9 months.
9 months. Oh, that's longer. Like I've heard crazy stories about like 6 weeks and stuff like that. What's your favorite map that you haven't have you been involved in the creation of every map in Tilo?
Every map that was on disc, yes, I was involved with, and then I was involved with a few DLC maps, bookstore, and
you make all the great maps. I think. Like...
Thank you. I mean, everybody who worked at Naughty Dog made great stuff. But
don't you say Water Tower too now? That would.
No, that's a different designer.
Second DLC, yeah, I remember that. It's so weird thinking about like Tilu getting DLC and all that. Sometimes we watch the old trailers just for nostalgia's sake. But what's your favorite map from Tilu then that you haven't personally been involved with? If you can recall the names, that is, you haven't played in a while.
Yeah, maybe Hometown.
Oh yeah, I like Hometown as well.
Yeah, it's a fantastic shorty shetty map, is that?
Sniping map as well, I think, or semi.
I like it because it's a night map, and they're so rare. That's why Downtown is a night map, because to add the variety to the different looks of the maps, and
high
I think
school.
being yes, and that high school is one of my favorite maps I made as well.
You mentioned earlier something about Downtown having a few issues. Are you allowed to talk about that? Are you allowed to tell us what the issues were? And
oh yeah, no problem at all. So it was originally designed for a certain need and certain design requirements, and it got changed, and it was one of the first maps that I changed up, and it didn't lend itself to the final multiplayer as well as it could have, and there's a lot of lessons I took from that. However, here's the other weird and interesting thing is that it played really well in Naughty Dog. It was one of the top maps in Naughty Dog before it was released to the public, and they released to the public, and everybody's like, "What is this?"
I could never get to play it. When I first started playing Last of Us multiplayer, it never got picked as a map. I think it was about a month into the game by the time I played it.
I think it isn't that bad. It just basically became some, how do you call it, like sort of a bandwagon thingy to do, like to dislike Downtown. But the one I like the map, but I like a lot of maps in Tilo actually. But the thing that I don't really like is the sort of the uneven surfaces that is around Downtown. So sometimes your head will stick out over a piece of cover and stuff like that. So for me personally, it missed a bit of, how do you call it, certainty in the map. And whereas Dam, for example, is like very clear structures, and you almost know certain, like, I'm not going to get shot behind this piece. And with Downtown, I'm always watching very closely if I'm crouch walking even. But they did brighten Downtown up, I think, right? It was really dark at first, and then they brightened it up a bit.
Yeah, that was a concern, was that because it's a dark map that contributed to why people didn't like it.
Well, I do. Yeah, high school was pretty popular, right? But then it's a lot of indoor stuff as well. Yes. There was this one time, I think, I'm not sure if there was like a glitch for one, but it was there was this one day, I believe, where they totally removed the darkness from Downtown. I'm not sure if that's actually something that Naughty Dog did or that it's just a personal glitch, but I've seen that YouTube video from ProjectsUnknown, I think it was. So it was really fun to watch. He was just walking around Downtown with daylight. It's so weird.
Yeah, I've seen that. It's a few years old, isn't it, that one?
Yeah. Like if I see a Tilu video right now, especially from like old school YouTubers, it's like 3 years old and 4 years old. It just it's sort of sad to see that that time has flown by so rapidly for me. Especially like back in the day, I was like 14 years old or something like that. So yeah.
To be fair, I'm interested to know, at Naughty Dog, do they actually know the player base for the multiplayer? Like how many people are actually playing?
Oh.
Those are that's information that I probably shouldn't disclose whether or not I know that information. It's very sensitive because I no longer work there, and I want to respect the knowledge.
Or like
as a company, then say if you're working for anybody, do they obviously know how many people are playing the multiplayer?
Yeah.
I believe that companies have that information available to them. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. It's a question that comes up a lot. Like, is how big's the player base?
They would say.
Always wondered.
They would say something like
an answer to it. Yeah, I reckon it's probably more than that. I think still playing, which is I think quite good for a 4-year-old game.
What number did you say, Jesse?
I said 10K. That's always what they say on Reddit. So like they say 8 to 15, and then sometimes 10K.
I'd have thought there'd have been more than that as well if we're looking global.
Well, yeah, I think I think it's more as well, but that's what I've came to understand from the replies on Reddit and stuff like that. I do know that like Call of Duty, they publish their numbers when you log in, for example, on Black Ops 2 You can cut this out, but it's just for information. They have like on Black Ops 2, there's still like 40,000 people playing on PS3. It's insane. But then they had this really bad installment, Infinite Warfare. Well, it was poorly received, and they didn't show the player numbers on the lobby. It's like the first time in forever. Yeah, but let's cut that part out.
What else? The only other thing I was interested in as well is about patching or patch notes to games. How difficult is it to actually patch a game? Because again, it seems like Naughty Dog were very, very slow in updating any problems in their multiplayers. Problems were in the game for a long, long time.
Well, I'm gonna stay again. Sorry, I can't answer.
You can't really say.
All the way.
See, I got all the questions that you can't answer.
And that's it depends on the content that is being patched. For instance, if it's some simple value tweaks, then it might be a lot easier and quicker to implement than, say, if you are releasing a new map or something, because the amount of data and information that has to be downloaded is a lot more. And also getting the verifying the patch and everything goes through a process.
Say as a player, I've found it very frustrating. Say when you've got game-breaking glitches that just don't seem to get patched, and yet you get some companies where I can't remember the last time I turned my PS4 on and didn't get an update for Overwatch or Titanfall.
Well, those are like
they're constantly. I know they're newer, but that's what I'm saying. It's even older games. There was still, they're still patching if there's an issue, and it just seemed like Naughty Dog actually just didn't seem to care. That's how it comes.
That's a bold statement, Simon.
Sorry, I've said it before. I find it infuriating. There was a game-breaking glitch at, say, Suburbs, for example, the fence glitch, and it just didn't get patched for ages.
No, I think it's fixed now, that though, isn't it?
So many complaints. It is, yeah, and I appreciate it. Like, everyone likes that map now, whereas everyone used to hate it.
I think the one glitch, if you want to call it, that sticks out for me that has never been patched and seems to be getting worse is the aim down glitch.
Are you going to say that?
And you get that in Uncharted 4 multiplayer as well. Because I didn't play it that much. I think I played it for the first 3 or 4 months.
I got it like a couple of times.
Yeah.
That is so frustrating. That results in death most times. That aim down glitch.
One more. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
That's right. Yeah, I don't know how things like that. Obviously, you have to be playing to try and suss out. It's all very well good to when people saying, "Oh, send a video in so we can try and suss out what's happening." I think you actually need to be playing and experience it to try and work out what has gone wrong there. But yeah, that is frustrating.
Definitely.
One thing I was wondering, and it's probably a risky thing to ask as well. That's why I saved it for last. But what is the craziest idea you guys brainstormed about for TLU multiplayer?
Interesting. Craziest?
Well, like in terms of let's get the 5 bloaters on the map or something like that.
Oh, well. Probably craziest was just to ship it at all. I'm gonna say for me it was to ship Damn. That was something. I literally slept under my desk to get that map shipped. So that's probably I'll say probably Damn.
Is there one map that now, like after the long life cycle of the game, or even after a short life cycle of the game back when, that you were like, we should have done this differently, or I'm not that happy with this eventually? Did that occur for you at any point?
Well, Downtown.
Oh, yeah.
But I'll say that I don't regret it. I think it was a great learning lesson on many fronts.
It's really interesting map. I actually like Downtown. It's just the unevenness of the ground that you can be aiming at someone 1 minute and fall down a hole, which is frustrating. But it's a really good map. It is a good map. Apart from that,
Thank you.
It's underrated.
I think it's good for interrogation as well.
It's better in interrogation than supply. I like the fact
for survivors, is it a bit too big? I think.
Bit too big. For interrogation, it's perfect. You've got buildings at either end with a lockbox in, and it's just basically storm the buildings, multiple ways in. It's fantastic. It's really good. It was perfect for interrogation.
What is your favorite game mode, actually, David?
Probably Survivors. I wasn't great. I was decent. That wasn't. I was much more Survivors person.
Oh yeah. Well, I think all of us here are interrogation, aren't we?
I am, yeah. I think that was a complete game mode for me. It had the stealthy aspect at the start of getting interrogations, and then the all-out war. That's what I like about it the most. It's got a bit of everything for me.
Isn't it like supposed to be the other way around? So like all-out war at the start, and then the sneaky.
I find it's normally sneaky to get the interrogations, but then the war starts. Brilliant game mode. It was I used to play Survivors actually, to be honest with you. Never really a supply fan, but when interrogation dropped, that was it. That was my baby.
Was there any other modes, David, that were brainstormed? Because I know interrogation got added at a later date, didn't it? I just wondered if there was anything else that was thought of at the time. Not allowed to say.
It's well, I'll say interrogation is exactly an example of the result of brainstorming for new modes to give more player experiences.
Yeah.
There's actually a lot of things in the TLU disc. There's this one guy called Freako who
he's brilliant.
yeah, he does a lot of data mining in the TLU files and stuff like that, because he has a modded PS3 console, and he does some interesting things with the multiplayer as well. He made his own levels, and with the single player, he made his own levels and mods and stuff like that. It's pretty crazy to see, actually.
Yeah,
I like his channel a lot. Yeah, even
what is
after
his
all
name?
this stuff. Freako.
He's
so just
literally
freaky, but then replace the E with the O.
I'll send you the link. He's just torn the game apart and has just messed with everything.
He found a lot of things for
It's
TLU
amazing.
2 as well.
Yes, in data files that were in the original game.
Yeah, and he makes what he also did is put Joel in Uncharted 3 maps and Nathan Drake in TLU maps, stuff like that.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see, and I think like his dream is to get some Naughty Dog or even former Naughty Dog employer to have a look at it. So yeah, I feel it's definitely worth to take a look at.
All right.
Did I mean I've got one final question really about the multiplayer. When it was first released on PS3, did Naughty Dog watch certain YouTubers and change or patch the multiplayer based on the recommendations from YouTubers? I mean, just one guy in particular stands out to me who I watched when I first started playing was GrantVoegtle, and I think he ended up getting an apprenticeship with Naughty Dog afterwards.
Yeah.
And I just wondered if they'd watched some of his videos, and I'm referring mainly towards the burst rifle, because the burst rifle is kind of regarded as overpowered in the Last of Us community. And originally Grant released a ratings video for each weapon, and he kind of said that the burst rifle wasn't very good, and then the next thing was there was a patch and the burst rifle was buffed.
King.
Yeah.
It's king.
And I just wondered if people at Naughty Dog, you might not know the answer to be honest, David, but I just wondered if people at Naughty Dog watched people like Grant and Sancho when they first started doing videos and thought, oh, that's a good idea, we'll change the multiplayer.
Sancho was really small, like 2K, but yeah.
Well, I was definitely watching the community when the game came out. I was watching videos and seeing what people were doing, and then I was playing too. I was playing with people, and it's a very humbling experience to go from being one of the top players of Last of Us and then shipping the game and then not being the top player anymore.
I mean, I'm not sure if you're fully aware with all the TLU community as it is now. There's the competitive side of things, which was originally called FN.
Frag Nation.
Yeah, am I saying that right, Jesse?
Yeah, I know Frag Nation.
Yeah, and Jesse was a big part of that in its original concept. I think you played for 2 years, Jesse, were it about?
3, I think.
3 years.
3, yeah. Until I stopped, like, the community joined up. But, like, back... There was this one tournament, the Apocalypse tournament, I think it was sort of hosted by Naughty Dog, and it had people like Triple Rack with his team play that. That was the only time I think there was, like, this big competitive tournament.
Yeah.
It was supported by Naughty Dog, I believe. It was a mix of Facebook and Reddit, something like that.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, just I'll send you my link to my last TLU monitor. But yeah, thank you.
But no, basically, I'd like to say thank you for making such an awesome multiplayer that we're still mad over 4 years on. Genuinely, it's so good. I don't think you realised what you did when you made that game. I really don't.
Thank you.
So-
I was going to say that, yeah, I am humbled and honored that there's a community like y'all who are still playing and still passionate and excited about it, and that's very cool. So thank you.
Yeah, I think we're that passionate about it, David, that we have reservations about a sequel. That we're worried that a sequel won't capture everything that the original did. Is there anything from the original that you'd like to see improved for a sequel on a multiplayer?
That's a difficult question for me to answer, as right now I'm not particularly looking forward to the second Last of Us.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Understand.
I mean, I'm very. Like, I still have several friends who work there, and I'm very excited for them, and I want to support them. However, just with everything that's happened, I'm not fully in support of everything right now.
That's a company, yeah. No, that's understandable.
Yeah, definitely. Si, have you got any more questions?
I don't think so.
Jesse?
Listen back and see what I missed.
Well, perhaps we can do a sort of after party after we've done the podcast. But yeah, David, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. It was so cool to speak to someone who made my favorite game, essentially.
Yeah.
And yeah, again, thank you so much again for coming on. I
Thank
give
you,
a virtual hug.
I appreciate it.
David, is there anything that you want to add, or are you happy with everything that we've talked about?
Just a huge thank you for inviting me on.
No worries. We really appreciate you being here, and I share Jesse's sentiment. It's nice to speak to people that helped create the only multiplayer I've ever played. To be honest, it's you know, I'm not a multiplayer kind of guy, so playing something like this is very unique to me, and you know, it's because you've made it into such a great game that I'm still playing it after 4 years.
Thank you. I mean, it was a team effort, of course, but thank you. Yes.
And also thank you, viewer, for watching the podcast in its entirety, or thank you for skipping right to the end.
Thank you, everyone that has been here. Thank you for watching it. If anyone is distressed by some of the content that we talked about in the first part of the video, then please reach out to us and we will help support you as much as we can going forward. Thanks, everybody, and we will see you all again in the next one. Bye for now.